Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name's John.lawwrence, National Housing Party leader. And tonight we've got a really good guest on, Nick Buckley. We've had Nick on before, but we've got Nick on again. Someone's noisy in background, settle down. Sorry about that. But, you know, like the honour system, and recently a Rotherham activist, community leader has been given an MBE for cohesion. And this is a guy who wanted to boycott South Yorkshire Police over investigations into child sexual exploitation and perpetrators in Rotherham, and really caused a big stink. And is intimately linked to the grooming gang cases by knowing people who were involved and stuff like that. And we give him an MBE. And I've always screamed for years about these MBEs, and we just give them to people to get them on our side, or box tickers, or whatever you want. And it's infuriating. And why is it personally infuriating to me? Is it's to do with Rotherham. And that guy is linked to a load of stuff that's happened in Rotherham, which is linked to cases, which is linked to a couple of cases that I was really close to and intimately involved with, that got me on this cause to end up me running in local elections and speaking about the grooming gangs. So, you know, it's really particular to me, and I know it is to other people, but it was years ago where we tried to get justice, or tried to speak out, and people won't listen to us, and we got threatened. And, you know, I just can't believe that they've given this guy an MBE. And I'm not going to start going through names, but Oldham's full of them, and so is Rochdale. People who do not deserve these MBEs or these honours. And I know we talk about that, and we know that the House of Lords is in that kind of way. When Boris Johnson left, he ended up giving a couple of lordships to people who just waste time and stuff like that. And it doesn't help our country, it doesn't help our community, it's not going to help our towns. But let's get on with the show. And first of all, well, we'll go straight to Nick Buckley. First of all, Nick, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for inviting me back on.
So you got an MBE for services, and I know a bit about you. You did a lot to do with charity work, besides the kind of high-profile jobs you had, like Piccadilly manager, working with the police about youth and stuff like that. And all them kind of things are well earned and well deserved. But you know, like that Muhbeen Hussain got his MBE for cohesion, but we know that he's not he doesn't integrate, don't want to, because he wanted to boycott the police in South Yorkshire. What do you think about it, Nick?
So it's always been like this. We need to understand why we have an honours system, ranging from making people knights and dames and all those things, all the way down to OBEs, MBEs and things like that. These were created to reward political friends. These things were created, first of all, by the monarchy, because you're on my side, you've sent your soldiers to fight on my side 1,000 years ago, so I'm going to make you a knight of the realm. Comes with no money, but you're a knight of the realm, and all the way through to today. So you can imagine conversations in councils where, do you know what, you voted the right way on this, and you saved us by voting this way. Therefore, I'm going to put your name forward for an OBE or an MBE. And it's a way of rewarding your political friends for doing the things you wanted them to do. Now, to make sure the public don't revolt at that system, what they do is they include nice people in that as well, such as how I got my MBE. I got my MBE for a decade working on the streets with the homeless, and 2 decades working on the streets with young people, stop them getting involved in crime, for setting up a charity that did all that sort of work. That's how I got my MBE. You could argue, you know, did I deserve it or not? That's a different argument. But politicians get them for being politicians, for voting the right way. A good example would be Sadiq Khan in London. Why was he knighted? Apart from winning 3 mayoral elections on the back, which no one's ever done, apart from that, what's he achieved? London's in a worse position now than it was 10 years ago when he took over. Crime's out of control. Community cohesion, London's falling apart. So why did he get a knighthood? I know why he got a knighthood. I can guess straight away. He got a knighthood off Keir Starmer because he's promised Keir Starmer he won't run to be PM. That's why Keir Starmer's bought him off. That's why Andy Burnham hasn't got a knighthood, because Andy Burnham hasn't promised not to run to be PM, Prime Minister. But Sadiq Khan has promised he won't. So he got rewarded with a knighthood. These are the ways our political masters control the game, control their enemies, control their friends to get what they want. And they throw some MBs out to people like me, so the public think, oh, these people, all of them must be doing good work. No, they're not.
Mr. Rimmer.
Yeah, it's not a subject I've really focused on that much, but I'm aware of what's been happening. I mean, when I was growing up in Liverpool, I was involved in amateur boxing, for years. And the people who ran those boxing clubs and organised the shows and raised the funds, they did it all for nothing. They were just volunteers helping the community. Liverpool was full of boxing clubs. It was full of football, football teams. And a lot of people just out of a sense of goodwill and because they loved the atmosphere and the camaraderie, they sacrificed time and money and they travelled all over the country to support these ventures, And these people should have been honoured for what they did, but they were never aware. They were just ignored. But these are the real heroes of British society, because what matters to create a decent society, you have to have this spirit where it's better to give than receive, that you're living sacrificially. And I'm not just talking about helping deprived groups or whatever. I'm talking about just helping your local people, just helping your community around you. I know so many people who organise like pensioners clubs or days out for the local kids. And it was this sense of goodwill. It used to be part of the working class communities, and really that's what we should have honoured all those years ago, but we didn't. We ignored them. But now we've got new communities that have come amongst us, and different types of communities. And these people are receiving gongs like they're going out of fashion. And it's just if they become a name in their local community, suddenly you find they get initials after their name, OBE, MBE, or as we're seeing, knighted. And this is just the campaign to replace us in our own society, to replace us with these new communities, immigrant communities. But I mean, you get like sort of people like Sel and John, When I was growing up, to be a knight of the realm, was really distinguished. You thought like it was given to war heroes, it was given to outstanding people, great scientists, people who made immense contributions to our country. But now you can get a knighthood simply for being a brave homosexual, who's out in the open and willing to tell everyone that he's gay. Suddenly, that's a worthy cause, and these people get letters and they get knighthoods.
And
so if you're
as well,
gay or if you're a Muslim, I mean, King Charles has just opened this Islamic centre, and he's making a big play about the Muslim. Everyone talks about the Islamic contribution to our society. It's not our society that they're contributing to. It's building up their own empire within our society. And then, of course, Keir Starmer himself is knighted. And who'll be next? Sir Richard Hemer, or, all these everyone who wants to pull down traditional Britain, wants to undermine traditional Britain, they'll receive the gong. I mean, I'm waiting for somebody to be honoured for helping out in the most assisted suicides once that begins in the NHS. So we'll get people who will be given MBEs for having helped 2,000 people commit suicide. And this will be seen as a public virtue. It's like an inversion of the Christian society we once had, where, people were honoured for like encouraging virtue and now they're going to be honoured for promoting vice. And this is how corrupt our society's become, the people at the top. But basically, we need the revolution in this country. We need to get rid of the ruling class pronto and replace it with decent, ordinary people who are still in touch with traditional values. Because unless we go back to those traditional values, we'll never redeem this society. This society is finished. So the honours system, it's just become corrupt as the political system and the social system as around us. And so it's lost all worth. If someone says that a night now, Sir Keir Starmer or Sadiq Khan, it's almost like a black mark against them. Sir Elton John, you think you must be an absolute rogue to become a knight now. And of course, the House of Lords, that's where they stacked them all up now. All the failed Labour politicians, all the wasters of yesteryear, all the failed Tory politicians, all the Lib Dems who are still gunning to get us back into the EU tyranny, they'll all be given a seat in the House of Lords and are. But the House of Lords was created for the great and good of the realm. The mighty men of the past who become great nobles and great lords and had that ability and had that experience and had that blue blood. Blue blood was important. They had that heritage, that they really cared about this country, and their families had made contribution to this country way beyond what was required through the centuries. And they would sit in the House of Lords. And they were given a role of just sort of supervising the government to make sure the government stayed in line, to make sure that laws were fair. And they did that with a great sense of dignity. They weren't, politicians, grubby politicians, just seeking to gain advantage. They were people who really reflected on what was good for this country and sought it. And yet these people are being driven out of the House of Lords now. The House of Lords itself is in disrepute. So we see a system that is in total disrepute. And at the top, of course, is King Charles, who's taken a vow, an oath, to maintain the Protestant religion and the Constitution of 1688. Something about our heritage, the Church of England, and the liberty of the British. And yet, he goes around promoting Islam as if it's the greatest thing in the world. Maybe to him it is. And so we see rot right through the system. Stuart, what do you think?
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm just as disillusioned as you lot with what we've got at the top. Absolutely disillusioned with it. I haven't really done a lot of a deep dive or anything, but I know a few years ago when I looked into it, that when you're a lord or a lady or a dame or a baroness and you sit in the House of Lords, you don't actually have to sit there. You only have to sign in a certain number of times a week and you get paid the full whack. You know, you can go in the odd day and you get your nice subsidised meal and booze and be able to smoke at the same time because the rules are different for them. Personally, I agree with Paul. We need a revolution. We need to strip away what's at the top, replace them with credible British people. I certainly am coming to the belief that unless you're second generation, I don't believe that you should be in any position of influence or power over our society. You only have to look at all the towns that now have foreign-born mayors, mainly Muslim, but not all. Every single one of those towns and cities is going downhill. It's like having a sanctuary city that they've got in America. There's a lady I follow on X. She runs the procurement files, and she's found out recently that we do have sanctuary cities across the country. And she's also recently unearthed that we have sanctuary schools. Now, so we're going right from the bottom of our education system, where we now have a Muslim in charge of our curriculums. Not many people know that. It's been kept very quiet. You now know why we've got programs within, especially primary schools, to teach children about Allah, Muhammad, the way to pray 5 times a day. It's wrong. We need to remove it. We need to put in patriots who have ties to this country and deep roots to this country already. People that we can trust. And yes, we need some academics in there. We need some top brains. We need some top financiers, etc. And there are people out there. There are patriots out there, but they're too spread about, and we haven't got them together. And the alternative that we're being given at the moment, it's almost like we've always had, really, left and right, everything to split us. And then yes, you mentioned the SDP earlier, which did gather the mainstream and then lost it for whatever reason. But the reform that we're being offered is watered down. It's not patriotic. You know, you only have to look at its chairman, who left and then come back, hides his name. He's obviously not proud of it. His first name is Mohammed. It's not Yusuf, whatever. It's Mohammed. So reform is not the answer. Groups like us, I believe, are the answer. Patriots to look forward. And before I go, I just would like to say, get onto our website, look at our policies. They are common sense, absolute common sense. Get in touch, add your own.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Please share the stream. 23rd of August, we're on our party conference at the PTSD camp. So if you come in, you need to email us and they'll book you in and get you sorted out. We need that because health and safety, and we need to know who's coming. We've got some food on barbecue and all that. But it's 23rd of August. It's not far off, and we want you on there, please. So let's go over to Pat. Pat, you've got Pat's got Sadiq Khan down there in London. So, oh, poor Pat. Go on.
Well, Sadiq Khan actually commented on our party when we just formed with our epic Blackwall Tunnel banner drop. Exit the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. It's okay to preserve white nations banner drop. Got into 6 papers, and Sadiq Khan called us the R word, which was a badge of honour. So that was good. But I just want to clarify what's the difference between OBE and MBE, Nick?
So there's many levels of the award system. So I think that the top one is probably in knighthood. And when you get towards the bottom, you've got 3 at the bottom, which is MBE, OBE, CBE. So MBE is Member of the British Empire, OBE is Order of the British Empire, and CBE is Commander of the British Empire. And
which is the most valuable 1 to 3 out of those 3? MBE, OBE, CBE?
CBE.
That's the most valuable, and then OBE second and MBE's third.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, yeah. So they've got quite a few then. They got knighthood as well, obviously. But I'll never forget this guy. And I was really, it was a long time ago. He was a dreadlock bloke with. He was a poet, and he was offered an MBE or an OBE by the Queen. And he rejected his, what's his name? Benjamin something. I don't know if anyone.
Benjamin Zephaniah. Zephaniah.
Yeah, and he said, I don't. He made a massive thing out of it and rejected it. And I just thought, you absolute dog. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you just, it just made me so angry. And but they've given them out to so many people like that when they shouldn't have, who just hate everything about us. And it's just like this stream was supposed to be about these sort of people who get awarded them, because, you know, they're not doing anything really for the British people. They're doing it for their own communities, etc. but like you say, Nick, it's another way of controlling the whole situation, etc. And yeah, and it's all down to the royal family. I am a monarchist, but I am not happy with the current royal family. I think that they should be tried for treason personally, and the children should be re-educated to proper Christian nationalism, and get a proper Christian nationalist leader back in charge of this country. But yeah, I mean, great stream. I don't know that much about this subject, but I think you must have done something good to get your award. And I remember you speaking about it before, for homelessness and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'll hand over to James. Do you want to contribute, James? You're on mute, James. You're on mute.
Just needed to tap it. I was pressing all the buttons around it. Yeah, good evening all. Sorry I was running late. Yeah, the topic tonight is an important one, because it just shows and evidence the betrayal of the native British people. It seems like the more of a sellout you are, the more you get rewarded, and we're just living in a complete backward society. And I can't comprehend how bad it's got. Really, it's I see similar headlines and what type of people are being awarded and for what, and it's truly disgusting. Yeah, but I think with everything going on and people becoming more aware, and they're not trying to hide it anymore. You know, it's right in plain sight. There is an awakening brewing, and we're starting to become more patriotic as people, and starting to come together more. And that's what's needed. We're all going to need to come together and help each other out, and to do the work, basically, to try and save our country. Yeah, like Pat, I don't know loads about this topic, so I'll leave it there. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you. David Ossologa, he's a historian at Manchester University. He's got an OBE, and all he does is slag the empire off and go on about anti-British things. That's all he does. And, you know, it's just so wrong. You know, if I was Prime Minister, I would be shaking up that system, guys. I would be. And you would have to earn your CB, OBE, FBE, whatever. You would have to earn it. And the House of Lords is a lot more difficult. Obviously, Nick said it well. It's all political constructs to get this mate and that mate. The House of Lords needs sorting out as well. And Stuart pointed on to something about like being a member of Parliament. You should just have a British passport. That's all you should have. Shouldn't have a dual passport. And we have actually got members of Parliament who don't officially have British passports, but they're still members of Parliament. And what it is with these MERS and that who get made up, and you know, I'm not picking on any community. The thing is, when you shout for one community, that affects all communities. Don't just affect. It affects everyone in that town, everyone in that area. And how do I know this? Because this is what happened in Oldham for 30 years before the riots. Was this sort of thing going on, and shouting for one section of the community and ignoring all the other sections of the community. So it's no good for anybody, guys. Don't think it's good for the Somali community, because it isn't. Don't think it's good for the Pakistani community, because it isn't. These people should be focused on looking after the town that they live in, whether it's made up of white people, percentage of this, percentage of that. Should be looking after everyone. And people did. You know, like councillors used to do this kind of thing, but like Nick said and Paul said, it's all like politically driven now by our mainstream parties, who we need to get rid of, by the way, and get them out. And, you know, like... I don't think we should have ever had a Prime Minister like Rishi Sunak, because he's not ethnically English. I just don't get it, man. If you go to Nigeria, you're not going to get a Nigerian member of parliament by being a white dude or from England. They're never going to allow it. They don't allow it in Pakistan. They don't allow it anywhere else in the world. But we have to accept all this diversity to put somebody like that.
It says in the Bible, John, in the book of Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 17, verse 15, that you should only appoint into leadership someone from amongst your brothers, from amongst the same nation. And this is a way from God, because if you appoint foreigners to rule over you, they're not going to rule in your interest. They're going to rule in the interest of their people. And that's what's happening. And we've allowed this in our country. So Sadiq Khan doesn't run London in the interest of Londoners, British people, Cockneys. He runs it in the interest of the Ummah, of the Islamic people, and he has totally transformed London in the process. We've allowed foreigners to take control of our cities and our institutions. I mean, the civil service, that's because of this Equality Act, which has put white people, British people, at the back of the queue. Because of this Equality Act, the civil service has been Islamified. And you only have to see the pictures now of the people who are controlling immigration and are making the decisions about asylum seekers. The whole system now has gone into meltdown. It's completely opposed to the interest of the British people. And we're being pushed out and we're being marginalised in our own country. And we need to see sense. We need truth speakers. We need foretellers, people who are prepared to speak out about this. Now, I want to ask Nick a question here now. Nick, who would you give knighthoods to? Who would you make lords? I mean, I was just thinking, maybe Nigel Farage got us the referendum for the European Union, and also he won the vote to leave. Maybe that deserved a gong or a knighthood, but he never got it. And you can think of so many other people who've made great services to this country and have not received any recognition. Anyone you can think of, Nick?
Oh, there must be loads. I'm looking at people like Dyson, the guy, the vacuum cleaner guy. There's lots of people out there who could contribute in the House of Lords. So I wouldn't get rid of the House of Lords, because what do we want? Another elected chamber like the House of Commons? That doesn't work. So let's not get an elected chamber, but let's get rid of all the Lords we have now. And what we do is we appoint people for 10-year service. And we appoint them because they have skills, experience in different fields. So let's get some surgeons in there. Let's get business people in there. Let's get Nigel Farage in there. And look, we have to limit the amount of politicians we get in there. I want a chamber full of experts with real life experience. So when they're looking at laws and, you know, reviewing the laws that come from the House of Commons, they can go, this won't work in the real world. This won't work. Have you thought, if you put this in here, you're going to get these consequences? So we do need a chamber like the House of Lords that evaluates legislation that's coming through. But at the moment, they're just a continuation of playing the political game. And then looking at the other honours, I would review every honour we've ever given out, and I would strip lots of them off people. And if that means mine goes because I'm outspoken now and not PC, then so be it. But I would strip so many people of their honours, and I would create new criteria of how you get an honour. So my first thing would be, you have to be born in this country. Why else are we honouring you? Because you're not our people if you weren't born here. So you've got to be born here. We have to demonstrate how you improved your community. That wasn't your paid job. Why are we rewarding people who are being paid to do a job? Most top people in councils get MBEs or BEs, but you got paid really well for 30 years to do the job in the first place. Let's go back to what Paul said. Paul said, what about the people running the boxing clubs and old people's, you know, family days out? They're the people we should be rewarding, because if we can reward them and show the rest of the community, this is how your nation pays you back when you're a good citizen, that hopefully will encourage more people to be better citizens, and we can reward them as well. But at the moment now, all this political maneuvering has to go. You shouldn't get an award, an honor, if it was your job to do that thing in the first place and got paid for it. That annoys me. Chief Constable resigns, retires, he gets a knighthood. You got paid £250,000 a year for your job, mate. Why are we giving you a gong as well? So all those things need to change. It's going to be a brave politician who implements these changes, because for you to become a top politician, you've benefited from this system. So you don't want to change a system that benefited you. And many people go into politics with the best intentions of changing the world and changing this country and saving this country. But decades and decades of working within the system, it corrupts most people. It corrupts them all. And they end up being the politician they hated 20, 30 years ago, because they've turned into exactly that same person they hated, and they went into politics to kick out. We've got huge problems.
I think Neil Kinnock could fit in there, Nick.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Neil Kinnock, he was anti-EU.
Yeah.
He was against the House of Lords. I mean, there are so many Labour politicians who spent the whole career. I mean, John Prescott fighting to scrap the House of Lords, pouring scorn on it. Neil Kinnock led the campaign to, oppose us joining the EEC. And what did they all do? They go to Europe, collect the money, they get the place in the House of Lords. But I mean, this is, as you say, it's the tip of the iceberg. I'm thinking about, you look at the United States since Donald Trump has taken over, US aid, which was pumping billions of dollars into all these quangos, into all these institutions, which are supposedly do-gooders, but were building up the anti-American Democrat constituency. And what did Donald Trump do? He just stripped all the money away, and now he's abolished US aid. We need that's a radical step. That what Donald Trump's doing in America is very revolutionary, and really we need that revolution in Britain. This is why we're a little bit disappointed with Farage. Maybe obviously he's not as strong as Trump. He hasn't got the backing of Trump. He hasn't got the prestige of Trump. But we need someone. We need radical voices. I mean, Rupert Lowe is saying a lot of radical stuff, but we need to take it even further. We've really got to shake this system before it collapses. James, you're a young man. What do you see the future?
I think time's running out, that's for sure. It depends where you are in the country, because I mean, I live in a relatively big town, but we're far enough removed from most of the stuff that people aren't that interested yet, but it's coming. I see the demographic change happening rapid speed in my town. The increase of crime, all the pride nonsense, and yeah, that's why now, like, I speak very directly, and I'll just say things how it is. And it's good to test to see how other people respond. And yeah, people are very, very programmed, and they have been for years. And it's all about trying to push the boundary a bit more, saying, hang on a minute, you can say this. So yeah, I feel like we need to act. I said to my brothers who are younger than me, I said we've got a battle on our hands. This is our generation now. We're gonna have to step up and put in the work, make sacrifices, become disciplined, become better people, so then we can influence other people around us. Because what's the other option? To basically be slaves, as we are now. So yeah, I feel like it's a battle worth dying for. Sounds quite extreme, but what other options do we have?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, James. Big shout out to Antonella in the chat there, and lovely Patriot. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Jackie Viva, who is she's on the 7th week of a reboot course with me. And it's been a really difficult 3 weeks. I will be doing a video probably in a couple of weeks about it. It's been a really difficult 3 weeks, but she's got right into it. Where other people failed, Jackie hasn't. She's succeeded. So, and I just want to give a big shout out to you two in the chat. I mean, Antonella, she likes things that I don't like, but I'm not going to hold that against her. I met her in person, and I think she's such a nice, lovely lady. She's got her own YouTube channel. She started doing a little video, so give her a follow, please. Anyway, let's get back to Nick. Nick, you've already done a couple of books, but have you got a new book out?
Coincidentally, yes, I have.
Oh, I like. Tell us. Come on.
I'm not sure you can read. Is it back to front on this? So anyway, I've got a new book out. You can buy it on Amazon. It's called Anglophobia, A Price Worth Paying to Be English. So I wrote the book to explore why we're hated, why the English hated. And Anglophobia doesn't just mean hatred of the English anymore now. It means hatred of the British. It means hatred of English speakers. It means hatred of anyone white. That's really what Anglophobia means now. And I've come to two conclusions writing the book. So the first conclusion is, why do foreigners hate us? And that was easy to answer. If your ancestors, if the best thing they ever built were mud huts, and you look at what the English, the British, Western civilization have achieved, of course you're going to be disappointed with your ancestors. Of course you are. You're going to either think your ancestors failed you, or you're going to think white people cheated. Which one are you going to pick? Of course you're going to pick white people cheated. That's why they were so successful, because nobody wants to admit their ancestors weren't good enough. It all comes down to jealousy and envy. That's why many people around the world, and many immigrants into our country and children of immigrants in our country, hate us, because it's jealousy and envy. We had to have cheated. But then I look at an even more complicated topic. Why do certain English people hate us? Why does such thing as English self-hate? Why are the educated middle class so anti-British, anti-English? And I look into that, and I come to the conclusion they're all different types of mental illness. And I start naming and going into detail of all the different mental illnesses these things fit into. There's a new one now called suicidal empathy. And that's when you're so pink and fluffy for other people that what you're doing is actually destroying your own people, your own country, and your own life. But that doesn't matter, because you're so pink and cuddly. You want to help everybody. We've also got Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome is when people intentionally damage themselves, cut themselves, poison themselves, because by doing that, they get attention from the medical profession. And that's what some people are doing. We call it virtue signaling. So I don't mind damaging my country. I don't mind my country going under, if while it's happening, people think I'm amazing and people are giving me all the attention for saying the right things. So the book's very controversial. Some of the things I go into, you guys will love it, but many people who read it won't like it. Obviously, I'll be racist, fascist, homophobic, sexist, misogynistic, all those things will be thrown at me. But it's a good way of trying to understand why we're in the mess we're in. Why do foreigners hate us, but yet they all want to come here? And why do English people here hate their own people and hate their own country? And if we can understand that, we've got a better chance of solving some of these problems.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. These are big issues, and it's been going on for years. The way they're attacking the British people, and I'm sick of it. I've talked about it a lot, and I'm sick of it. And
let me give you a couple of examples out of the book. So at one point, I'm talking about anti-white hate. Does it really exist? I give example after example. So why is Black Lives Matter a fantastic slogan that empowers Black Americans to be better and protects their lives? But if we use the term White Lives Matter, that's a Nazi far-right slogan. If you want to look at, I then look at things like white fragility, white supremacy. That's a great one, white supremacy. And I discussed that. So if there's such thing as, let's talk about white privilege. That's another good one. Does white privilege exist? I would say no. I'd say majority privilege exists. If you're the majority in any country, there's some privileges that come along with that because you're not seen as an outsider. But white privilege, so we've got people, Black and brown people living in the UK, who they can't have white privilege. But I tell you what they do have. They have white country privilege. That's what they have. If white privilege is something, if it exists, you inherit it from your ancestors. White country privilege is something you've never earned, but you steal by going to a white country. All these things are looked at. And I go into detail in lots of these things. The last chapter is fantastic. The last chapter is called "What Have the English Ever Done for Us?" And I show all the inventions, the medicines, the ideas, everything we gave the world. And at the end of the book, I say, do you know what the English deserve? The English deserve a great big fucking thank you from the world. Because if it wasn't for us, there would be no modern world. We created everything. I look at the top 10 scientists in the world, the top 10 inventors, and this little part of this tiny island that contained the English contributed more than anybody else. And we deserve a huge thank you from the world. The amount of people we've saved with our medicines, the Industrial Revolution. We gave the world our language. And we're talking about cultural appropriation all the time. I don't remember anyone asking me, can they speak our language? We gave our language as a gift to the world to bring the world closer together. And are we thanked for that? No, we're not. And there's lots of things we've given the world that if they didn't have. Sports is another good one. Something like 8 out of the 10 most popular sports in the world, based on viewer figures, 8 of the top 10 were all created in England. 8 of the top 10. We gave the world all our sports. And do we ever complain? No. Everything we invented that was amazing, we gave it to the world as a benefit. We didn't accuse anybody of cultural appropriation, of stealing our ideas. We're going to take it. It will improve your lives. It will save your people. You'll have a better life. That's what we did to the world.
Yeah, we did. And I'm in full agreement with you, Nick. I really am. And everything. And even in my little town of Oldham, where it was cotton mills and stuff like that, and steam engines, even we can trace some of the technological advances in mill steam engines to Oldham, guys. You know what I mean? So I'm proud, mate, and I've always talked about everything we've done in Britain and what it's given the world. And everybody, every civilization does bad things or good things or whatever you want to say, and we shouldn't just pick on one particular people. But that hatred is been so much more in the past 20 years, so much more pushed on us, and I don't like it. I really don't like it. And I've talked about it. I've talked about our history. I've talked about things we've done. I've talked about the Industrial Revolution. I've talked about medicine. I've talked about pioneering and engineering, and anything to do with the UK. I've talked about all this already, and we have a great legacy.
The thing is, though, John, we've got enemies, and this is the problem. It's our enemies that have undermined us. I mean, do you address the issue of cultural Marxism, Nick?
Not in this book. In my last book, I mentioned that. But you are right. We do have foreign enemies. We've got some small ones, like Russia and stuff like that. I'm not worried about Russia. The big one we've got is China. China can potentially create the next world war and potentially win it, if it goes their way. I'm not
really looking at national enemies, Nick. I'm looking at ideological enemies. Obviously, Marxism. Marxism portrays itself as a form of compassion, but it's really about destroying the order that's been created. I mean, you got someone like Leon Trotsky, who was obviously a leading Marxist Russian revolutionary. He coined the term racism. Jewish, yeah. And he constantly called the white Europeans racists. And he used that word to turn the hierarchy of the world upside down. Suddenly, instead of being white being like the top dog because we'd achieved so much, suddenly we were the brutal bully. Suddenly we were the abuser. And the real people who deserved praise and support were the people supposedly at the bottom, which was if you were black or brown, you were suddenly lifted up and elevated. And of course, the greatest victims of them all were the Jews. And they played this victim card through history, very cleverly, because the truth is they could also be portrayed as the biggest villains. But what's your take on that, Stuart?
Well, if you look at the roots of communism, it is Jewish. All the leaders were ethnic Jews. The ones that, now we're always told Hitler, worst person in history, but nobody goes to General Gouda, who run all the gulags and killed millions and millions of white Christians. And that's the point. It's an anti-white, anti-Christian agenda. And the anti-Christian is probably more important or as important as the anti-white. And it is being driven by an ideology that is against Christianity. In the birth of Christianity, the Christian people are now getting burned out of their homes. They get spat on every day. They don't have the same rights as everybody else, even though you're told they do. So what we need is to return to our British values, our British roots, and the enemy is within, I believe, and it needs rooting out. Hook, line and sinker is the say. It needs, James said something earlier that's twigged with me, he's speaking the truth as he sees it. That's what we need. We need more truth speaking. We don't need to shut down free speech as they're doing now with the Islamophobia laws and also the hidden anti-Semitism laws. And that's going to be used to help shut down society, I believe. And if we don't confront it, if we don't go, right, we've got to forget, in a way, the past, just build on that. I do believe in Christianity. I do believe that all the Western Christendom countries are the ones that are being inundated with strangers. And that's what they are. They're strangers. They have no ties to the country. They should not be in positions of power I personally believe for at least 2 generations until they've got roots in culture and hopefully assimilated to our society. And while I'm on here, guys, if you can, please support us. If you believe in what we're saying, support us. We need to get local people out and build from foundations with real English patriots. And look at our website, Common Sense Policies. Thank you very much.
You know what, Stuart? You said something important there, because we've got to withdraw from conformist institutions, conformist ideologies, which are conforming to this ideology which wants to tear this country down and destroy it, which is all quasi-Marxism one way or another. But if we don't withdraw, this is the good thing about Nick. He's written this book. This is an independent voice. We need for people who, as you say, who speak the truth, who, foretelling, because if we're going to rediscover our identity, and our identity is constantly under attack, if we're going to rediscover what gives us meaning in life, what's important, and this is again, you go back to our Christian heritage, question of right and wrong, and what's the meaning of life, and then you go to, meaning, identity, but above all, truth. We need truth speakers. I was listening. What Nick said about his book was brilliant. I'm looking forward to reading that book. What's it called again, Nick?
It's called Anglophobia. A price worth
Anglophobia.
paying.
I heard that word a few years ago. A sort of detestation of the English It's so perverse, isn't it? Because the English, I've always sought in a very genuine way to be fair-minded and to help people. I'm sure we're not perfect, but in comparison with other people, we've done a lot of good in the world, as you're saying. And it sounds a fantastic book because it's got depth there. I love the fact that you focused on sports and of course, language. So much we've contributed to the world. And of course, we gave birth to the real powerhouse of the world, the United States of America, which is obviously China's going to have to be faced down because China is not a fair-minded country. It's not an open country. It doesn't respect liberty. It's an alien culture and it's a danger to the world. And people are a bit mesmerized by China. But we need to reassert our values, which I think are far more preferable. John, did you want to say something?
So it looks like then a book review. Well, I'll have to get hold of a copy of Nick's book and then I'll read it myself and do a book review. But yeah, dead interesting things in it and stuff that I know about as well. So it'll be great. Thank you to everyone in the chat who's joined us. Thank you to Antonella and Jackie as well. Mark Williams and everyone else who's been on. Vinny's been on and all that. Pat's busy. He's had to go. And Jackie, JG Cats and things. Yes, Jackie. Thank you for that camera last week. It worked a treat. But this is a National Housing Party. My name's John Lawrence. We've had a great guest on tonight, Nick Buckley. Nick. And big things coming off, Nick. Some of the stuff he does is really relevant to how I would like to get into my career of being a local councillor. Youth work. I'm really on it with that youth work thing. I'm surprised I've never been a youth worker. That's what I should have been. Charities as well, and helping people with homelessness and stuff like that. So Nick's definitely a person I can look up to how I want to be. But great guy, a great guest tonight. Thank you to Stuart and to James. Are you all right, guys?
Yeah, all good, thank you. I would like to just pipe in with one thing. I think the education system, our education system has been infiltrated. I've had to confront what I've been taught, what I was taught as a child. Now, I was always taught white man bad because of slavery. Yeah. And obviously, slavery was not good and slaves were treated bad. But it wasn't just the white man. Most of the boats were not owned by white men. They were owned by the bankers. And your bankers are not Christian. They're not Jewish. They're not Muslim. They are of the synagogue. I firmly believe what's in charge of everything, the banking system and everything. And we could do with kicking out the banking system in this country. So it's right from education is right through to our banking system and our governmental system. None of it is good for the people. None of it represents the people. Like I said, I had to confront what I'd been taught. You
mentioned slavery there. That's a fantastic subject to discuss because, of course, the Islamic slave trade was on a much bigger scale than anything Europe ever did. And, of course, within Africa, slavery is still today endemic. But the education system, I don't know how old you are, Stuart, but I was educated before all this political correctness came in. And we were taught to be proud of the British Empire. We were taught to be proud of our heritage. We were taught to be proud of what we achieved in the Second World War. We were taught to respect our elders and our betters, especially the monarch and so on. I got the end of what was the British Empire, and it was something good. It was something wholesome. It was very Christian. It was very decent. It was about uplifting humanity. And this word Anglophobia, it's such a powerful word because no one ever talks about it, Nick. I mean, they talk about Islamophobia. They talk racism's thrown at us left, right, and centre. Of course, homophobia, etc., etc. And yet, no one ever mentions the discrimination which is growing constantly against white people and against the English. Why do you think that is, Nick?
It goes back to those 2 points before. If you're a foreigner, it's jealousy and envy. And if you're an English, British person, it's mental health issues, conditions, syndromes, things like that. But going back to slavery, I write about slavery in the book. Slavery was normal. If we lived 400 years ago, all of us would agree with slavery, just like we all eat meat now. It's something we've always done. It's fully acceptable. The reason why slavery was stopped was because some English people said, this can't be right. It might be tradition. It might have always happened for hundreds, thousands of years. Slavery is recorded in every single civilization we've ever come across through the history of time. But some English people said, no, not only is this wrong, but we're going to convince the world it's wrong. No one else had ever done that before. No one else had had those thoughts before, that they wanted to change the morality of the world because they said it was wrong. And then some of the things I looked into about slavery. Slavery isn't the transatlantic slave trade. That was a couple of hundred years. Before that, we had thousands of years of slavery in Europe. The word slave comes from the word Slav, because the Ottoman Empire and the Vikings took so many Slavs as slaves that they gave their name to the word slave. Everywhere you look, you go to places like Hawaii. Hawaii had slaves. You go to New Zealand. New Zealand had slaves. They were lucky if you was a slave in New Zealand, because people in New Zealand, the Maori in New Zealand, used to eat them. And the ones that didn't eat, they would make into slaves. The Comanche in North America had slaves. Slavery was everywhere. Who do you think built the pyramids? Who do you think built Angkor Wat? Who built the Chinese Great Wall? Slaves. It was, every country had slaves. But like I said, it took a couple of Englishmen to go, no, this is wrong, and we're going to change the world. And then when we ended the transatlantic slave trade, and then our country had to buy this freedom of every slave in our empire, because it was legal. You couldn't just take property off people. We bought their freedom, and then we spent a small fortune policing the high seas to ensure nobody else could be involved in the slave trade. We are amazing people, an amazing race of people. Again, and then black people say to us, oh, slave trade. Well, I say to black people who say that to me, I reckon if we DNA'd you now, you've got people in your family alive today in Africa who are slave traders, because it's never gone away in Africa. There's more slaves alive today in the world than at any other time in the history of the world. More slaves alive today in Africa. Africans have always enslaved each other. And when we had the transatlantic slave trade, it wasn't white Europeans going to Africa and stealing people. White Europeans were sailing ships to ports and buying slaves off slave markets that black Africans ran. Black Africans used to kidnap their neighbors and take survivors of war who were all black Africans, and they would sell them into slavery, and then white people bought them and shipped them across to America. And then you're talking about how bad a life of a slave. Well, do you know what? I'm not, for one moment, I'm not saying slavery is good. We should bring it back, and slaves were treated wonderful. They weren't. But let me put this in.
You know what the real danger is, Nick?
Go on.
If the English are destroyed, slavery will come back into the world with a vengeance. If the Muslims take over, whatever, slavery will come back. We're the only people who've ever really stood against slavery with everything we've got. And as you say, it's an amazing story that we changed the world and said slavery is not acceptable. But when the English go, the others will resurrect it and let the world needs us. It's not just that the English need to save their own country. The world needs the English to be saved.
let me give you this one extra bit of information on slavery. This blew my mind when I read it. At the height of the slave trade in America, so in Alabama on a plantation, a black slave at that time lived 9 years longer than an Englishman in the north of England. That's how, everybody had it hard. I'm not saying slavery was good, but they lived longer in America than free Englishmen did in the north of England. That's how hard our lives were.
Amazing, amazing stuff. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Nick, Paul, Stuart, James, Pat, when he comes back on. Well, he won't come back on. Thank you to the chat. Big shout out again to my lovely Antonella and Jackie Viva. Yeah, they're love hearts for you two girls. And everyone in the chat, big thumbs up. And you know what? We'll see you next week, 8 p.m. Don't miss us. Thank you very much.